So touchdown, first drive, looked great. Followed with 4 3-and-outs. What went wrong after that first drive?
Yeah, the consistency is a big thing. It's something we're always going to be striving for on offense, individually and collectively. So certainly really pleased with some of the things we did on that first drive, and frustrated by the fact that we weren't able to kind of keep that momentum going as we got through the games. I think it was a little bit of everything. I think it was execution, it was scheme, it was all those different things. Some of the things they did on defense, but certainly not the way we wanted to continue after that first drive. So got to figure out a way to fix that.
When there are situations where finding the balance of the run and the pass is difficult, do you try and figure out ways to run the ball differently, or do you just kind of focus on maybe passing the ball if that's what you are finding success with?
I think you hit on it. I think it's that mix, and it's different every game depending on who you're playing and where your success is being had. And you certainly want to keep somebody off balance, so you never want them to say, hey, they're going to do this, or they're always going to do that, or they're going to live in this world. I think that's really important, to be multiple, to be dynamic, to be difficult to defend. So every game comes up different from that standpoint, but certainly we want the threat of both at all times in everything we're doing.
Along those lines with James, I mean, obviously he's one of your important players. Do you come out of that game going, okay, in the moment I was doing what I thought was right, but now I'm out of it, and I'm like, man, I really wish I would have had him more involved? Or are you good with however it turns out because that's just how the game went?
Mixed. I think certainly in that game, I wish I'd given James more opportunities to impact the game. I think looking back on it, as you look at what happened, how the game played out, I think obviously flow of the game plays into that. At some point, obviously the lack of success and lack of plays certainly limit that opportunity. And then being behind, you get into a situation where you have to throw the ball based on time left on the clock, possessions left in the game. But he's one of our best players. He's playing at a high level, so need to get him and keep him involved.
They weren't stacking the box against you much, if at all. But I mean, throwing the ball up first and second down, did you just see something there in early game planning, or what?
Again, it's that mix of kind of attack who they are, who we have. Certainly have a lot of faith in Kyler with the ball in his hand, and want to give him an impact, an opportunity to impact the game as well, because he's a very dynamic player. And certainly they don't always have as many bodies, but the bodies they do have are pretty good. So we got to try to find a way to mitigate some of that, and sometimes that's in the pass game, sometimes that's in the screen game or the run game. So I think it was more just kind of flow of the game. I thought he did a nice job. I thought he stepped in. You saw some of the explosiveness. You saw some of the dynamic ability. I was really, really pleased with him towards the end of the game and some of the pass pro opportunities he had. It's not an easy thing for a back to do, and I thought he stepped up and was ready to go.
In the previous 2 games with Kyler, there were several possessions that obviously didn't go the way you want. In this game, how frustrating was it, though, that after the touchdown, it was like 4 in a row that just kind of compounded on each other?
Yeah, I think the frustration is you hit on. Anytime we're not putting the ball in the end zone, I think myself, the guys on the offense, I would expect them to be frustrated. So, when we're not executing, when we're not getting the guys we want open, when the runs aren't hitting, I think the guys did a nice job of continuing to battle, continuing to fight, stay together, which I think is really important when you're not having that success. And we're going to put it together this week and try to figure out a way to fix that for sure.
3 weeks in, where would you assess Kyler at this point?
I think he's done a nice job. I think you've seen him really embrace both sides of the offense, the run, the pass, just handling the operation. Certainly there's always going to be things, even when you're in year 5, 6, 7 of an offense, that you're always going to be working on, tweaking and changing. But I think he's made really nice progress. Has it been perfect? No, and he would be the first to admit that. But I think he's getting more and more comfortable in what he's doing, what we're asking him to do, and certainly need that to continue as we move through the rest of the season.
How's the footwork coming along?
Good. Yeah, I think, you saw him, again, at times, and some of it is not the memorization, some of it is the pass rush, some of it is perceived pass rush. So you do get sped up at times in the pocket. I think every week we're going to talk to him, hey, you were really good here on these footworks, and you can see why it worked. And then, hey, sometimes you got away with it, and then other times it got you because you weren't quite in rhythm or you were a little sped up, and it affected your progression and things like that.
You switched his front foot. What went into that, and could he have stayed the way he was in this offense?
I prefer the guys put their left foot up. Is that mandatory? Ultimately, no. But he was very quick to embrace it when we first got here as he was going through his rehab. It's something like, hey, this is how we do it. We're going to show you examples of why. We're going to show you what we're looking for. And then it's something he can kind of do on his own. So that when he hit the field, it was something even though we weren't able to work with him on it, he's watched guys do it. He watched the tape from Cleveland last year. So I think he was very prepared to make that transition as he stepped back on the field.
We asked him about it last week, and he said he'd only had his right foot up.
Yes, prior to us getting here, yep.
Was this kind of the perfect time to do that, coming back from that injury when he basically, I don't see he's the one out of walking it, but like that process is so long and he has to get back on the field?
I see what you're saying. Yes and no. I think certainly because he had time to focus on just that, because he wasn't necessarily able to play the game, it probably sped up the transition a little bit. But a year ago, we had 3 guys who had really never done it in the quarterback room in Cleveland, and they jumped into it right in April and May and hit the ground running. So I think it is something that when you commit to, guys are generally pretty quick to transition.
It's all about timing, right? The left foot up.
Yep.
Is that why? What's the numbers behind it?
We just think it puts the quarterback in better rhythm to go through his progressions and make his decision and get the ball out. Now, again, and I've said it in here, there are teams that do it with their right foot up that believe that their timing and the way they teach their routes and the way that they teach the depth and the progressions work the same. So I would tell you neither's right or wrong. It's just kind of we believe this because it's timed up with the way I was taught and the way that we teach the routes, but it doesn't make it the only way to do things.
There's a faction of fans who hear about the footwork change, and then they see what the results have been the last couple of weeks, and they freak out that is the reason why things might not be going exactly right. That's, I assume, oversimplifying any issues here?
Yeah, absolutely. I would have, to me, our success or lack thereof has had no impact. His feet have had little to no impact on that in my mind.
How has he done with going to the center and running the boots? Like, it seems like it's giving him a little bit more time, more flexibility now.
He's done a nice job with it, and certainly it takes 11 people to operate those. And we've really stressed the sell of the run, the body language, the communication, the line of scrimmage. It has to all look the same, feel the same. And if it's not, then he's not going to have the time, and he's not going to get those clean edges. So, certainly had a couple opportunities in the game on Sunday where he was able to do that. It's always something we like to build in because it mirrors to some of the things we do in the run game. And he's done it both in the gun and under center. I think he's had success doing it both ways. So, certainly going to continue that side of the offense moving forward.
JG has referred to the offensive line as a thinking position, any of the 5 up there. How much of that role specifically kind of goes into the mental toughness aspect of it?
It's huge. And, obviously the quarterback has a lot on his plate from a mental standpoint, just in terms of everything he does to operate the offense. But second to that, probably the O-line is the group that has to make the most adjustments, have the most communication, both in the run game, in the pass game, multiple fronts, second-level pressures, just making sure that they're all on the same page, they're on the same page with a quarterback. So it's a really big part of those guys being able to think, process, and communicate at a very high level is really important to the success of that group and the offense.
How do you think that they've done that specifically with Yelda Froholt kind of being the person that needs to call the shots from that spot?
I think you hit on it. That's one of his strengths. He does a great job during the week, a lot of his preparation and study and the questions he asks to make sure that he knows all the different nuances of what we want to do, why we want to do it, who has to know, how it needs to be communicated. So been really pleased with him taking that role because it's very, very vital to our success.
What have you found the last few weeks with the Hollywood-Kyler connection? What are you attributing the struggles they've been having to?
Again, I think it's it's a small margin. There's some times where we've had opportunities and we just missed them. There's some times where he had an opportunity to make a play and just missed it, and then there's some times where we had some stuff up and they had the right coverage on and it wasn't open. But I think you've seen that growth over the last 3 games and certainly started to hit that connection a little bit more than we had the first 2 on Sunday. So need that to continue. Obviously, they I think see the field very similarly. I think they played together a long time. So only expect that connection to continue to grow.
Pittsburgh's defense can do a lot of different things, but they love to get after the quarterback, and their front 7, their front line is pretty stout. What do you think of what you're going against?
Yeah, it's a very talented defense. And I think I said this. I thought I got out of that division, and here we are again. I played them 7 times the last 3 years. It's a really well coached group. Certainly, as you said, it's the front 7, and you can name the top 3 guys. I mean, they're premier players, probably Hall of Fame players. They make the defense go, and they have for a long time. Attitude, effort, intensity, mindset, and physical execution. So certainly that's where the game starts. It's going to start and end up front, and just in terms of how we handle those guys and the things that they do. But they got some good players in the back end as well. And they certainly, as you said, multiple coverages, multiple looks, a lot of pressures. They like to get after the quarterback. And they like to stop the run. They're stout. So we're going to have our hands full in terms of the way that we attack them, the way we handle them, and we got to be up for the challenge.
After facing him 7 times, have you figured out how to slow down T.J. Watt?
No. And when I do, I'll let you know. I think everyone has tried to find that answer. No, I mean, he's as good as there is. He really is. I mean, he's done it. It's one thing we talk about consistency. I mean, he's been the model of that. He's been doing it his entire career since he stepped in the league. He's dynamic in both phases, plays the game at such a high level. So I have a ton of respect for him as a player.
First of some brutal road games weather-wise. Coming from Cleveland to now be in this type of weather, I guess, 1, how do you prepare for that if you can? And 2, what type of advantage or I guess disadvantage would you have going into those situations if that's not the normal weather here?
I think it's honestly harder for coaches than players, which is kind of laughable. Like the adrenaline of actually playing football, I do believe takes a lot of that out of play. And I think people make a big deal of it because the fans are sitting in it, the coaches are standing in it. And really at the end of the day, when you walk on the field, your adrenaline is so high. My guess with those guys would have no idea if it's 15 degrees or 95 degrees, honestly, when the game's being played. So I think it's, hey, you got to have a plan when you come off the field in between series to make sure you're, warming up when you need to be. You're fresh when you go back on the field. But it's the people not playing that, honestly, I think have to adjust to it more and make sure that they're in the right frame of mind to go into it. Because playing the game, I think you honestly almost forget where you're at sometimes.
With the way it went in the first half, aside from not obviously getting things done on offense, how much effect do you think that can have perhaps on the other side of the ball on the defense? Because you're just not taking that much time off the clock in a lot of those possessions.
It's a big part of the game. I think we talk about complementary football. And certainly when we're not being able to stay on the field, when we're not being able to put up points, I think you put stress on the other two phases. You're going to be punting the ball more than you need to be. You're going to be on defense more than you need to be. So, that's going to continue to be an emphasis for us is, hey, if we're going to be successful as a team, we need to stay on the field. We need to convert third downs. We need to extend drives. And we need to put up points. And certainly when we weren't able to do that, I feel like we're letting the team down. I certainly feel that way myself. I know the players do. So, we got to carry our load, and that's certainly going to be true every game we play.
Opening drive had a nice blend of under center and shotgun looks, and then from there on it looked like there's just a lot of shotgun getting ran. So just what changed in your mind, or what was the thought process there?
It'd be interesting. And as we kind of looked at, I think that was the most he'd been under center in the 3 games. And, I think even in the second half, in the third quarter mostly, I think there were 4 or 5 times still put him under center. And I think as we talked about kind of when that score got to a point where, like, all right, the run isn't really – the threat of the run or the run really isn't alive anymore because of the score and amount of possessions left. I think that's where you see some of those things. But, I think he's done a really nice job in the under center snaps he's had. So don't have any hesitations one way or the other on that.
What have you learned about James Conner, sort of off the field, the veteran, teammate, leader, what have you?
I think just that, as you just hit on it, the even keelness, the leadership ability. Like, does he want it? Like, he wants to touch the ball more. He wants to have an impact on the game. But it wasn't like he went super negative and tried. He was like, hey, he was a great teammate. He continued to work his tail off, stay involved in the game. He was great after the game in terms of my conversations with him about, hey, here's what we did, here's where we need to go going forward. And he's been great that way the whole time. So certainly expect that to continue. But been really pleased with that. And I think a lot of the guys look to him for those leadership qualities, and it's good to see.
We talked about the 4th and 3 play last week, and just curious, we did ask Jonathan about it yesterday. When the offense was actually moving a bit there, late in the third quarter, had the 4th and 6, and the balances going for it were a 56-yard field goal. Was there discussion about that, and what's your thought on it?
Yeah, I think, and we talked about a lot of those discussions are happening on first, second, third down in terms of, hey, here's the line, here's where we need to go, here's where you got to be green. So I always feel like I'm very informed in terms of when we're going to go for it, when we're not. And then in the back of my mind, there's always that, like, hey, got to be prepared if something changes quickly. But I think JG and the staff do a really nice job of making sure that we're all on the same page when those decisions are made, and we know we're getting the field goal team out there and trying to get 3 points on the board.
Is there a yardage involved there, where 6 is made obviously harder than 3, certainly, but is that, I assume that's part of the discussion too?
Absolutely. Yards to gain, the length of the field goal, all of the score, the amount of time left on the clock. Because, again, it's about possessions left in the game. So that's all. How many times are you going to have opportunities to put a point on the board, and how many points do you need? All of that kind of gets calculated into that conversation.
That was the point you made last week about, well, we don't know if we'll get down there again. In this game, well, you certainly don't know if you can get down there twice.
Absolutely. And that's where that distance, like, hey, if it's 2, 3, 4, you might be going for it. But there's that cutoff where you're saying, hey, feel like the percentage of going for it relative to the field goal makes it a field goal decision.
That game probably didn't go the way you were hoping.
Nope.
I know that it seemed like you found some stuff at the second half of the Houston game. Were you disappointed with how it started and just went in general?
The Rams game, yeah, obviously wasn't a good defensive performance. We didn't do our part to help win the game. Gave up way too much in the rushing game, and that always is a lot of factors that go into that. Obviously, with scheme, execution, technique, tackling, explosive runs, those really hurt. Gave too much up in the screen game as well. Did a good job of limiting some explosives in the pass game against a really good, passing game scheme and a good quarterback and some good receivers. But ultimately, there was too many too many explosive runs and too many explosive screens to, execute where we needed to.
Did you miss? I know it's always next man up, but did you miss Kaiser more than maybe you thought?
I mean, you're always going to miss a really good player and a leader. But I feel good with Chris and Josh stepping in there, and Owen got some snaps as well. I feel good with those guys going out there and continuing to help us win and improve their games as we continue on.
What went into the decision of the starting cornerbacks and then putting Devon Wilson in when Starling went down?
Yeah, I think our corners have done a great job of competing every week in practice, and guys are improving throughout practice. And, like we always talk about every week, we're going to go into it with hey, who needs to play or who's ready to play and who can help us win this game. And that's where roles constantly changing week to week. I think you're kind of seeing that with some of the stuff we're doing. And, those guys went in there and did a good job. And, that's something that week to week everyone needs to be ready to play and everyone needs to continue to improve.
Jade, you said that Keytrell had been building back up to get to this point, and that you guys really saw a jump about 2 weeks ago. What did he really show you just to really get back into this point?
Yeah, what popped off the tape is he tackled really well. That's not something you always are looking for with corner play, but it just so happened a lot of balls went to the flat on him, or he had a screen his way, and he tackled extremely well. I thought his off technique was good. He was sticky on some cut splits where they're trying to get you off and get some access, and I thought he was in and out of his breaks really well. So he had a good game, and you saw it, no surprise because he was showing that stuff, throughout practice leading up to that point.
What does Marco have to do to be able to get back on the field? Because even there when Starr got hurt, then D-Bot, came in, and so he didn't play at all.
Yeah, just like everybody, Marco or whoever, they got to continue to improve their game throughout the week of practice, and then it's got to show up in the game. So, Marco's going to play very important football for us going forward, and it's just like everyone's got to continue to improve their game, because the better we are individually, the better the unit is, right, and the better the team is. So, continuous improvement and competing every week in practice.
Is it pretty safe to say that Garrett figured things out fairly quickly, because he was hurt for a while, and now he's got a pretty big role?
Yeah, he's doing a good job for us, obviously, in there at the nickel spot. Yeah, I feel really good about where he's at. He's got things he knows he wants to get better at, or plays he wanted back from that game. But he's doing a really good job. Prepares like no other, honestly. So it's no surprise that he's able to, without having an off season as a rookie or a training camp, and then kind of get thrown in the fire in the middle of the year. Not only does he have the physical tools to play that spot, but he is ahead of the game mentally, and it's because of his preparation process.
How difficult has it been with all the juggling on the defensive line? I think Sunday Jonathan was the only guy that was out there that was played in week one, and he had a little bit of a shoulder. So how tough has that been?
Honestly, unlike myself, it hasn't been difficult at all, because I think that Derek does a great job with that entire room of preparing everybody, and those players, the whole D-line, it's a room filled with guys that love football, and they prepare like they're the stars. We talked about that with Phil a couple weeks ago, about how even when he wasn't, playing or active, that he was ready to play. And I just feel like guys, whether they are here in the off-season training camp or they got here in the middle of the year, they're just really good pros, and they're ready to step in and play at any point. So for me, it hasn't been difficult. I trust, hey, it's unfortunate when you have injuries, but when we have injuries and it's time for somebody else to go get their chance and prove what they can do, those guys are very ready to go do it. So it hasn't put any stress on me. They do a really good job of preparing every week, no matter if they're playing or not.
Statistically, this Steelers offense looks like it's struggling. What do you see just from your studying?
Yeah, I mean, they have some really good players across the board. Whether or not that shows or not, these guys can put up points at any point because they're explosive on the outside. They got two backs that can take the load. Warren can make big plays. Najee Harris can wear you down. And the O-line plays good, and the quarterback's got a really talented arm, and he can extend plays. He can get the ball off on time. So, at any point, these guys can put up put up yards and put up points, and I think they do a tremendous job of taking care of the football. They don't give it away a lot, so that's something we got to harp on is, hey, these guys are going to be as difficult as it is to take the ball off of them, so we're going to have to work on that throughout the week in practice.
As you look at the tape of different games, could you see a difference last week with the change that they had?
Yeah, there were some subtle differences. Obviously, a new play caller, things will get called a little bit different, but you could tell they did a really good job of being well balanced and, again, protecting that football and continue to keep their defense on the bench. They did a good job with that.
I hope Meyer makes a big difference.
Yes, he's a really good player as well. Yes.
Hell of a game Sunday. Did you see any of that yet, or you doing that?
Well, yeah. I mean, he opened the game with an explosive play. I think their tight end room is deep with guys with different skill sets. Freiermuth, he's really well-balanced tight end. I think he's a good blocker, and he's obviously a weapon in the pass game. Obviously, Washington can do some things in the run game really well. He can move people. He can move. Just last week I saw him. He was moving some big, strong, good defensive linemen. And then Hayward kind of gives him a little bit of a different type of tight end, kind of a unique body type, but he's got a lot of juice, and he'll go in there and throw it in there in the run game as well. So I think it's a really well-balanced tight end room, and having Freiermuth back definitely helps them.
With the way the game went, the flow of the game in the first half, after the offense had the touchdown, and then the next 4 possessions, I think, took just a little bit of 4 minutes off the clock. What impact does that have on the defense when they're going out there so quickly each time?
That's not really something that we're going to let affect our mentality. When it's our time to go, we got to go. It doesn't matter what's happening in other phases of the game. We got to do our part, and obviously we got to do our part better than what we did. So not much effect. We got to go out there when it's our time to go out there. We got to go out there and play good football.
How did the Rams slow down your pass rush, keep you no sacks, and how do you move forward?
They did a good job of staying on a third down, and then when they were in third down, they did some creative things to try to get the ball in their hands quick. So, we got to try to get people behind the sticks. When they're able to establish a run game like they were, you're not going to get a lot of chances to go after the quarterback. Or when they do pass it, they're setting it up off the run game, and the quarterback's protected, or they're moving the pocket. So. That's difficult anytime you can't get them behind the sticks to really get after the quarterback.
You mentioned the explosive plays that the Steelers have had, but that was obviously a big part of that running on Sunday. I think 3 plays were over 100 yards. Is there a single thing that goes wrong on those, or is it just a combination?
Combination of things. That it can be within a play, scheme related, technique related, tackling, all the above. So. Usually on those big plays, it is a handful of those things. So, you got to do your best to clean it up and make sure that doesn't happen again.
What can you take away from Owen's small sample size, and does the message change at all knowing that he's got more of an opportunity to get some more defensive reps moving forward?
Like you said, it was a small sample size. What he did his job, though. He did a good job. We'll see going forward on week to week what we see that role being or how big, and we'll see.
Those rookies that have played, what's different in the meeting room? Like, how are they looking at film differently, or if anything, just because there's more to look at? So how does that change for those guys?
You're saying as far as just rookies' development as preparation?
3 corners who played, now there's a lot more film for them to see what they did.
Yeah, I think anytime, whether you're a rookie or not, anytime the more time you have on task, the more experience you are to it. Your preparation skills and your routines can enhance, and their routines on a week-to-week basis are developing, and the more you can see yourself on tape too, I think that helps to really understand where you need to take your game to the next level, as opposed of you're studying the guy ahead of you and you're not seeing yourself other than practice. When you see yourself on the game tape, you get corrections to how can I improve my game a whole lot faster, and that's where you can see a little bit more of rapid development with any player, not just a rookie.
When they called that penalty at the end of the first half, did you know that it was probably going to cost you a chance to re-kick it, or has that ever come up with you before where you don't even get a chance to redo it?
Not in a game that I've been coaching in. It happened
in a New Orleans game, it was a different penalty, but they didn't have enough guys in the line of scrimmage. Maybe New Orleans, Atlanta from 6 years ago or whatever, kind of used that as a training tape for what can happen at the end of half, end of game. It's considered an offensive penalty, so the half can end on an offensive penalty.
Is it one of those things where, I mean, you want to run the clock to the point where that's the last play,
Sure.
but that would be the one downside of running the clock down to that point? Probably?
Yes, I've been with different head coaches who have different philosophies on that. If the game's tied or if you're down, whether it's the end of half or the end of game, most of end of game situations, end of half, it's unlikely that something like that happens, but it's still a possibility. But there's some people that want to say bang the timeout at 2. There's some people that say no, make it 7 just in case. As teams have gotten better and better at the Stanford band play, laterals and stuff, people become more conscious of that and just saying, okay, what are the odds something like that's going to happen? So it can change your decision making, but certainly scenarios we discuss.
What happened on that second 56-yarder?
He just missed it. His plant foot kind of got stuck. Usually Matt's really good about finishing downfield, and right at impact, it didn't go like it normally went. And, unfortunately that causes kind of the kicker's hips to change, and the ball kind of veered out to the right.
So Blake Gillikin had more rushing yards than Kyler Murray in one of the rare cases. What kind of went into that decision, and why did you feel like that was the right time to pull out that trick play?
Yeah, you'll have to ask him. I mean, he went rogue on the play.
Really?
Yes, I'm kidding.
Yes, I'm kidding.
No, it's it's a play you can't do often. Obviously, you got to be pretty confident that there's going to be an open run lane because, as you just cited, Blake's not used to carrying the ball. It kind of came up earlier this season. We were playing a team that we thought, this was a possibility, and we didn't quite get the look or the call in the game, and it's film study with me. It's film study with Sam, talking through the different scenarios. We thought it was worth it, at that point. I went through probably the last 10 years worth of similar plays, whether they were called or accidental. Sometimes the snap's a little off in some games, and the punter kind of got pulled, and he looks up, and there's nobody there. He takes off. Some of them look like they were called, but it's not a real common play. You don't see it often, so we were able to pull that off.
In your years with specialists, generally, do they relish a chance to do something like that, or have you run into some that are like, I really would rather not do a fake?
Everybody's got a different skill set. After his 40th birthday, I'm not sure Andy Lee would have been real excited about running the ball, but Andy can really throw it. I've coached several punters that can throw the ball. Some better athletes than others, but most of the time those guys are excited about having a play up, and you just hope things go right. There's certainly some plays where the punter running with the ball has not gone right in league history.
When he took off, he was peeking behind him, hit his shoulder to make sure, or see where the guy was. What's going through your head when he's taking off, when he's running like that? Do you think he's going to get caught? Like, what do you?
No, the only thing we're concerned with is getting the first down. They had been pretty consistent up until that game on how they were playing certain alignments. They actually changed something on that play that was one of the things, the guy coming off the edge on that side. It was a little bit different, so it wasn't exactly how we practiced it, but we just felt like, all right, here are the parameters. This is the side we want to go to. If it happens to go to our sideline, great. If it has to go to their sideline, not as good, but feel like it's still got a chance.
What's the kill switch for that when you see, okay, well, last second, this guy's coming over here and filling that edge, and you're like, now we better not run that play. Is there?
We have ways to turn plays off and on. Different mechanisms with that.
You talked about the skill set, and he did have pretty good running ability there, so obviously you had to know that going in.
Yeah, we do pretty extensive scouting stuff, and then, once you get with the guy, I mean, those guys run for conditioning. And, during practice, they don't get the same amount of volume when it comes to cardio stuff. And sometimes that can lead to bad things. For example, I was talking to a strength coach with another club in the spring, and he had mentioned to me that he has their guys do something like every 10 to 15 minutes during a practice, because a specialist, generally speaking, is going to do their job and kind of hit it in cruise control, right? Like they're second-level players. They're not sprinting down the field. Most guys don't. Some guys do. I remember when Neil Rackers was here, he was sprinting down the middle of the field. But, all of a sudden the ball breaks on a punt or the ball breaks on a kickoff, they have to sprint. So we try to do enough things throughout the week to give them a chance to where they're not running into some soft tissue things. Yeah, we've seen him run before.
Are you more focused on I know you mentioned that the goal was to just get the first down, but if he has more yards that he could potentially get, would you rather him go closer to the sideline so he could get out of bounds and not risk turning the ball over, or what's kind of the logic with that one?
There's a reason why we didn't run it up the middle. I mean, you're more in control of the space when you're running away from people. You have the option of kind of veering towards the out of bounds. People are going to be chasing you from the inside. There's more people on the inside than there are the outside. So the odds are it's probably going to be somebody from the inside, but like I said, it was on their sideline. So their coaches and sideline are saying, hey, fake, 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 and those guys turn around. Fortunate for us, he was able to get the first, but you got to be careful about how much you're coaching those guys, because you can tell them, hey, get the first down and slide. Okay, what if he started his slide right at the line? There's things that enter our minds as coaches that sometimes are better left unsaid. And the coaching point is just, get the first down. Once you do that, don't get tackled, don't get touched.
This might be a really out-of-the-box question, but I've seen a rugby ball out there. Is there any benefit to having that around? I see Aaron Brewer carry it around a lot.
That's not for us. There's some other position groups that have worked with it. Brewer is a very worldly person, so he's got interests outside of football, and apparently rugby balls are one of them.